Hey, it's the Morrow Marriage podcast, guys, where we give it to you real, raw, unscripted, and uncensored. Why? Because if everybody continues to lie to you, setting the examples that you've already grown up with, the lessons we see from TV, from social media, well, your marriage is still going to suck. You're going to be either looking and striving for baseline normal, or you're going to go from best friends and roommates with no intimacy all the way down the negative tailspin and become enemies. And we just want to disrupt divorce, including yours. We're going to talk about why peace is so important in the home.
Stop trying to lead and make decisions all the time. And
you should not be proud if you raised your voice and screamed at them.
no matter what.
No matter what. I'm Cass.
And I'm Kathryn. Why am I allowing him to do this in front of our children? Why am I allowing this to happen at all? You don't get to say whatever you want to a man and push him to the point where he snaps.
I might have been a really bad man the other day, but today I went out of my way to be a good man, and she thanked me for it.
Is that you always want to act in the direction you want to go. So
He is just a paycheck. What about his needs?
we're MorrowMarriage.
Let's flip divorce statistics with the new marriage.
So let's get into today. I want to take a really detailed time here to go through why you need to stop talking about sex if you're not having sex. So if you want more sex and intimacy in your marriage, I want to go through a little bit of what happens. And I've never actually had this conversation with Kathryn, but it's something that I teach. I post about it all the time. I was recently posting something and they got like 4 million views on it. And it's because it's real. And people still fight back and say, I want to communicate. Communication is key. We need to address these issues. And then there's more to it. People start diving into, by the way, they're all communicating on my social media, going on about how, no, you should have married somebody who matches you and all. Listen, this is exactly why I want you to stop and pay attention to this episode. If you're justifying the exit of the marriage because you can't figure out intimacy and you're blaming it on the fact that you should have met somebody with the same intimacy, attraction issues, how many times today do you want to have sex, all that stuff, you've missed the fucking boat. You were already intimate before. Let's get real. You're sucking yourself down the spiral and then you're going to go try to fix it by having a conversation. So let's talk about what happens when you do. All right. In the beginning, life, let's just say life gets in the way. You have children. Okay. And or promotion at work, busier, more hours, working more because I want to buy a house. You get it. Life gets in the way. And so intimacy levels change. You're not as frequent. Maybe you rush it. It's a little quicker. You're trying to be purposeful. And then ultimately, you'll have a little conversation. Yeah, we got to do this because you're still both pretty much in the game. It's just that you recognize that we've had the kids now and things have been different. Obviously, the body's back to normal by this point. Or normal-ish or whatever.
The hormones, you mean?
Yeah.
The body.
Sorry, yeah. I'm sorry.
He meant the everything.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah,
she translates for me sometimes.
No pressure. My body is not back to normal.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a new.
It's new. Never going to be normal. Have you seen this thing?
It gave his children, and he loves every saggy inch of it.
Oh,
it's not that saggy, you guys.
She's tight.
But if it is saggy, that's not what I meant. Sorry.
Slow down. Okay, so you do restore the intimacy. And so you're already supporting that you think communication is going to work, right? Because when things are good and you get it, life's been getting in the way, right? You're not nearly as defensive. You're not attacking. You're just in a loving way saying, I want you more. Okay? Then after a while, it's changing though, because those reasons are real. What's happening is other things are starting to happen. I'm going to go to the example now that say you're working more because you have a goal. This started good, conversation, goal for new house. So we're working a little bit more. And so now you start throwing in the defense in your communication. Well, of course I haven't been dating you as much or flirting with you as much. I've had a lot of stress in my mind from the work because we have this house that we want. And so you're like, oh, yeah, okay. But in that defense, you start to create negative feelings. Both of you. Maybe feeling a little guilty, maybe a little ashamed. You could have been pulling a little more weight, but what do? We actually want to blame our partner. Because we don't want to feel guilty. That's why I'm justifying I had to work more because we said we wanted kids. We said we needed to buy the house. Okay? And now what happens? The intimacy starts to fade because now you're trying to connect and force the connection. Go ahead.
Because the woman at this point is starting to feel bitter. So we did make the decision. We did agree that he's going to work more. You're going to stay home with the kids. We agreed that he can work overtime. We agreed that he can do all these other side jobs. We agreed on all of that, but you didn't communicate to him that you were starting to feel distant. You were starting to feel abandoned. You were starting to feel alone and lonely and frustrated with your role, even though you love your role. You don't know what to do because you didn't communicate it. And then all of a sudden, there's this disconnect between the two of you. You're pulling back on intimacy because you don't feel connected because of a decision that we made.
Now, this is so valuable, guys, because this is where I would teach men. No, she's been telling you all along. You just didn't hear her or see her. What do women say? I need to be seen and need to be heard. But Kathryn, you just said, did you guys catch it? She said you didn't communicate, that you were starting to feel distant. I think that there are so many ways that some of you will say, yes, I did. I was feeling lonely. I wanted those dates. But maybe you didn't actually communicate what you were truly feeling. I feel so lonely. Okay. And why a woman then says to her husband, well, no, I did communicate, is whether or not you use the correct word or not, or the verbiage or the correct feeling is what it is. Okay. There is guilt and shame on that end. Justification on why you were working more, for example. Okay. Again, negative. You can't create the positive with the negative. Okay. So.
And when he says that, you may think that you have said something because you'll say things like, are you working late again? What time are you going to be home tonight? You'll ask questions, but you won't say, I feel lonely. And I'm guilty of this as well. I feel lonely when you work until 8 p.m. I feel lonely. I'll just say, are you going to work till 8 p.m. again? Can we spend some time? I won't actually say, I feel frustrated. We need to evaluate what we're doing. And the reason I'm using myself as an example is because we have an amazing marriage. But as a woman, you do want to provide that platform. You want to provide that atmosphere for your husband to be a provider. You respect that he's a provider. You love that he's a provider. You want him to do what he needs to do to be able to provide for the family. But all of a sudden, and I say all of a sudden because you say things like I just mentioned, and you don't realize that you feel lonely. I didn't say I feel lonely because I didn't feel lonely until it becomes an issue. Mm-hmm. And so when you say, well, I did tell you, I did express myself. No, you probably didn't until it was too late. And then when you did express yourself, you expressed it with bitterness and anger and resentment, which is building up that wall between the two of you. If you can't connect emotionally as a woman, you're not going to be able to connect as well physically.
And especially if you consider this, like your tone probably came across a little like the frustration you were feeling.
Are you still working? Yeah. Are you still working right now?
That's right.
Are you on another phone call? Why are you so late? I thought you were going to be home by this time. And, you know, right now I'm not speaking with a lot of contempt, but you can hear in my voice that there's expectation, there's defensiveness, there's a disappointment. It might not be as bad as it could be, but even just the way I presented it right now, I gave you 3 examples. It's not ideal for the man that now feels the guilt and the shame and all of those negative feelings. And it just, again, that builds that wall.
And this is where this whole like, oh my gosh, men get victimized, right? Well, I'm supposed to provide, I'm supposed to protect, I'm supposed to do all these things. But now we're not protecting her heart. You're not providing the emotional safety in the home for allowing her to feel. If I believe this wholeheartedly, if your wife can't use the right words, associate the right feeling, she's lashing onto the frustration instead of the loneliness, the sadness that she needs to communicate to you, share with you, then you're not providing an atmosphere for her to feel safe. There goes the trust. You don't have to be a guy who just doesn't punch her in the face to say you're not going to hurt her. Okay, you got to wake up. So now you're going through this cycle here. Notice we're not saying talk about sex. We're saying share what needs to be shared, the need, the desire in a safe way so that you can be moving the connection forward to where the sex would come. But not once are we saying, I need to fuck. This is essentially what you're saying, guys. Every time you say, well, I need you. I worked all day. Now I need you to lay there and spread your legs. Okay. So the next thing that what'll happen is, and you guys that have been there will catch on to this very quickly. The sex always gets better when you have these conversations. What would turn you on again? Why don't you want me? Like this is how I would have presented it.
Did you just say the sex always gets better when you have those conversations?
Yes, I meant that. Hold on. Sex does get better in the beginning of these conversations because you feel like guilty. I got to be a good wife. I got to do this. You're feeling bad. Of course, you know that I have needs. And all of a sudden, ups the game a little bit, right? A little more involved, a little more in, a little more, okay? but she's not actually wanting to do it because she has these other negative feelings. She wants to be there. And this pattern starts to go, and it becomes a true pattern, because then soon the sex starts to go worse again, if not worse than it was before the conversation. And we just keep repeating the same cycle until eventually the sex just kind of dies away. You're fighting about it all the time. Now we're really getting all the negative feelings, or you start to get as bad as I was, where you became afraid and had to do it. And we did an episode it was about how long will it take to save your marriage. These kinds of things are the reasons you need to understand what I'm saying. There's been pivotal moments in our journey where the first one was like, and I say the number was like 18 months. Okay. She's like, well, I just realized you don't expect sex anymore. That happened again, like another 6 months after that. And then even recently, I don't know, you're sick a little bit or something. We were on the go, whatever. And it was a quieter week. Okay. She's like,
quieter sex week is what he means.
Yeah. Yeah. And she goes, oh, I just hadn't realized that it had been the week or whatever. And you were like, oh my gosh, I'm truly safe. I'm free. I'm truly safe. Like no pressure, nothing.
No.
And so this was a journey, guys, right? Because I had so many conversations. Why don't you want me? What would turn you on again? I thought you liked sex. This also, for some of you, could even go further. I know what you did with the other guy. You were so into it in the beginning, you just used me. You used me to have children. All of these things are real, right? Maybe not for all of you, but there's these different degrees. And then she's going to have her own versions. I'm too tired. I think I'm asexual. Like it can go on and on and on and on, right? So if you want more sex, stop talking about sex. If you need to have conversations about some of the other things, chances are at this point, you need more help. You need a program. You need to start showing up differently. You need to start doing things a whole lot different, because now just addressing the issues, by the time she's grossed out, doesn't want sex, repulsed was the word that Kathryn used for me, right? I feel repulsed by it, which I heard was you're gross, but anyway.
That's what I meant by that.
Yeah. And so what happens by that point though, is that I'm not attracted. I'm not in love. I'm settling. I'm coasting, or, something else could make her a little bit more excited, feeling a little more safe somewhere else, right? I'm not saying another man necessarily. Could be the children, could be a mother talking to her friends about anything that just makes her feel safe and she gets to be herself. Now you're definitely not going to connect sexually. Never mind passionate sex.
Because you're not that emotional connection anymore.
That's right.
I just have one quick thing to add before we end. So he said that initially when you have the conversations, why don't you want me? What turns you on? What do you need? I need more sex. Initially, the sex gets better, is what you said. And I want to acknowledge that, because for the men, it does get better. For the women who are trying so hard to make it better for the men, you all know that it gets worse. And I think it's really important for the men to recognize that when it gets better for you, and it's because of those fear-inspired conversations, those expectation conversations, you might get your bucket filled and your pipe cleared a little bit more often. But ultimately, it's because your wife wants to love you. She wants to do right by you. She wants to be your wife, but it's depleting her. So it gets better for you and it gets worse for her. And the reason that he talked about the spiral after that is because of that reason. So we as women, we do want to be there for you. We do want to give you what we need. We do want to be there for you and be that. We want to be everything for you, right, baby? And there's a journey that you go through. And I think it's really, really, really imperative to recognize and to just remember that when that's happening, open up your eyes and see that you still need to be a team. Because if you are getting your needs met at the sacrifice of your wife's needs, then
all you're doing is telling your wife through every one of these conversations, and every time it was better for you and then it got worse again, you're showing more and more that I'm just using you. I could use a sex doll the same way. That you start justifying things like porn and the slippery slope there, coping mechanisms, all these things, because you're throwing yourself a fucking pity party instead of recognizing what you could do to start showing up and meeting her needs in a way where it doesn't get better for just you, for momentary. It gets better as you build up the different tiers, the different types of sex, which you should want with your wife. You shouldn't want to just blow your load. Let's get real here. I know if you're listening, that's not what you want. So stop showing her that with these conversations.
I want to end with this. So the topic is stop talking about sex if you want more sex. You can still talk about sex, but stop having it be a one-way conversation. If you are talking at your wife about your needs and what you need with respect to your sex life, that's not going to get you further. If you can have a conversation with your wife about what you both need and about connection and about all these things that you need in your life that build up that sexual intimacy, you can still have those conversations.
Yeah. And I think it's really important before we end to say this. You're way past that probably right now. Ask her what she would need, which is what you think you're doing when you say, what would turn you on again? You know, what would make it more exciting for you again? You're way past it. So you need the foundation to have the intimacy, but right now you need to rebuild the foundation and work your way up what I call the rejection ladder so that you can actually have the connection on intimacy on all levels. And then, like when we have sex conversations, it can be fun, but
imagine that, you guys.
But that's not what you're trying right now. You got to think about where you're at. Okay. We'll see you next time.